Hello everyone, it's JD here from Studio 2105 and Direct Access Mixstream Online. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I do drum sample replacement in Cubase using a combination of Steven Slate Trigger and Steven Slate Drums 5. First, let's take a listen to this song which I'm working on. I'm currently recording and also going to be mixing the new album from Malaysian band 6 Cents. So let's take a quick listen. Alright, so this is a short little segment of the verse of this song which we are recording. So as you can hear, there's the drums, there's also the bass and the guitars that have been recorded. Okay, but what we're going to be focusing on will be the drums only. So let's just mute everything else so that we're going to only listen to the drums. Okay, here we go. All right, okay, right. So these drums are sounding awesome, okay, because they're being played by an awesome drummer, which is Juan, okay, who is a drummer for 6 Cents, right? So he's a really, really great drummer. He's pretty much my first call session drummer if I need to, to sort of record any sort of a live drums for any projects which I'm producing. To start off with, this is a really, really great sounding drum performance, right? Played very, very consistently, dynamics-wise, everything was very, very consistent by a great drummer. Drum sample replacement is a tool which you can use, right? Sometimes to sort of correct, maybe inconsistencies or imperfections in the recording or in the performance. But it also can be used in creative ways. For example, if you want to layer different sounds, if you want to, sort of make the sound a little bit larger and a little bit larger than life. Okay. So, but in this case, let's take a look, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. We're going to be only replacing the kick and snare. That's primarily, usually, most of the time, 90% of the time, we're only working with the kick and snare when it comes to drum sample replacement. So what I'm going to do, okay, is I am going to pull up an instance of Steven Slate Trigger. I'm going to solo the kick only. Okay. Steven Slate Trigger. This is, of course, the latest version is Trigger 2. So what Trigger 2 is, it's actually a software. It's a plugin for, of course, right, triggering and sample replacement. Now, it does come in with its own sample library, which it shares. The samples are the same as Steven Slate Drums 5. Okay, but I'm not going to use the built-in sample library inside Steven Slate Trigger. Right, I'm going to load the samples into Steven Slate Drums 5, which will be an external VST. Okay, for me, I prefer doing that because it gives me a lot more options, okay, inside there. So let's take a look. So here we go. Let me play this kick. Alright, as you can see, as I'm playing back, the plugin captures and analyzes the waveform, okay? So the first thing that we want to do, okay, is that we want to sort of bring up the input volume. We want to sort of optimize the input so that the plugin will see the optimal range of the audio of the kick drum sample in this case, okay? So let's turn this up. Okay, so roughly about 10 dB, okay? All right, roughly about 10 dB. We want to see the waveform, right, sort of cover as much of the display as possible. So, so the plugin is seeing a good signal level to work with. Okay, so There are a couple of controls. The main one, right, that we're going to be concerned with would be this one, the sensitivity. So sensitivity, as the name implies, okay, right, is, how sensitive it is to the drum hits, okay? Okay, now the second one over here, this is called retrigger. And so retrigger here, as you can see, this is a millisecond value, the default being 15 milliseconds. Retrigger is very, very important because it's the retrigger value is it's what it tells us, it tells trigger, right, how quickly or how fast before it allows the next, right, instance of triggering. Okay, so sometimes you want to set this, you may want to increase a bigger retrigger value because you don't want to have accidental false triggers, for example, from maybe a stray snare hit, or maybe if there's some leakage or something like that. Okay, so you want to set a certain value. Okay, sometimes as well, if you're, for example, right, if we're talking about maybe some metal, right, really, really fast and modern metal, with the double pedal kicks. Okay, so sometimes you want to be able to set this retrigger to be able to capture, right, every single hit, because it can be very fast. So you may want to go with a lower value, but in this case, right, pretty much 99% of the time, the default value of 15 milliseconds pretty much works for almost every style of music out there. Okay, now, so I'm going to leave the sensitivity value at 50, and also the retrigger value at 50 milliseconds, which is the default value. So the important parameter that you have to adjust here, that we want to look at, is this one. This is called detail. Okay, so detail here pretty much is it's the equivalent of the threshold. Okay, so as you can take a look, if I adjust the detail, you can see the threshold markers over here will show you. So the lower the detail, right, the more sensitive, the lower the threshold, right, to the incoming signal, right, that's going to trigger. So let's start somewhere in the middle. Okay, at 50, and let's play the audio. Okay, so what we want to do is want to make sure that your detail, right, the threshold pretty much is going to capture, all right, all hits, right? You want to set it at a value that it's going to capture the transient of the kick drum, but not capture any other transients, right? So let's take a look. It's pretty good. Looks pretty good. Let me bring this down a little bit. Okay, so I'd say roughly about this 27 is good, all right, because it's making sure that I'm also capturing the some of the softer hits as well. Okay, so roughly about that 27 looks like a good number. Silver Slate drums, you can also have a filter section, right? So the filter section allows you to kind of narrow down the range of frequencies of which trigger is listening and is sensitive to. So it depends. Okay, so in this case, we are working with a kick drum. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring all this high cut all the way down to 400 hertz, because what I want to do is, just to capture the low frequency information that's coming for the kick drum. Okay, so we leave it at that. So the suppress here, this is a bleed suppression feature. Now it works in conjunction with the filter values here, the low cut and high cut, all right? But in this case, we're talking about a kick drum. There's not a lot of leakage in this case, right? So we're not gonna, I'm not gonna touch and work with the suppressor in any way, okay? Okay, now, the one cool thing about the Silver Slate trigger is that it also has a built-in gate, and this is an awesome gate, It's one of the tightest gates, one of the best sounding gates which I have ever used, right? And somehow, what Silver Slate has done, the way that they've tuned this gate, they've made it work really, really well and really awesome, okay, for drums, okay? So let's take a listen to how it sounds. I'm going to put it on. These are all the default values. Okay, let's play. As you can hear, it's really, really tight. Okay, so obviously we can always turn the release down if we want it to sound tighter. Yeah, so at about 206, this is sounding really, really tight, okay? So again, it depends. You can always tweak. You can always play around with the release value. So for example, if you want a little bit more sustain, you know, from the kick drum, you want to sort of retain that, you increase the release value here, right? Works really fantastic, right? The default settings somehow, right, is really, really awesome already. You're pretty much good to go. So the next thing that I want to do, right, it's really, really simple. Once we have sort of captured the MIDI for this kick drum, okay, this is what we do, right? First thing what we're going to do, right, is I'm going to clear the buffer, right? Because as we're playing back just now, it's actually kind of recording and capturing the buffer of the MIDI notes. So let's play this section. Okay, here we go, and take a look. While it's playing, all right, it's going to be capturing and also capturing the MIDI notes, the triggers. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay. So once we're done, okay, we'll just work on this as sort of 8-bar section first. Once it's done, it's just a simple matter of dragging this down into the project window over here. So let's do this. Okay, drag on track, and you can pretty much drag it anywhere, but to be safe, let me just drag it down to an empty spot down here. Okay, right, and it should automatically line up to where it should be. There we go. Okay, so let's bring this back up here, and voila, there you got your kick drum trigger MIDI information right here. Let's rename this to kick sample, right? SPL for short. And let's take a look, okay? Bring this up here. Let's take a look. All right, okay. So in Cubase, all right, you have what we call the edit in place feature. So let's take a look at this so that it will show us the MIDI notes exactly where it is. Now, Steven Slate drums and most of the triggers, right, is velocity sensitive. You can always, go into a more advanced, some of the more advanced functions, right? You can play around with, for example, the velocity and the dynamics curves. Okay, so, you can play around with the attack, the sustain, release dynamics, the velocity. You can also play around with the range, right, of the values that you want to generate. Okay, so again, pretty much we're not going to touch this. We're going to leave this at the default because it works pretty much all the time. Okay, so okay, a couple of things. So at this moment, the note that's been triggered to is C2, right? I'm going to sort of reassign these MIDI notes over to the default GM MIDI note. Okay, and I have a little macro over here. Okay, let me do this very quickly. Logical preset. Okay, set notes to C1. Okay, all right. So there you go. Poof, automatically, all right, it has gone to C1 over here. Okay, so let's go it out. Now, I have already pulled up an instance of Steven Slate Drums 5. Let me just pull it up for you. Here we go. Okay, so on the MIDI track, let's make sure we route it to SSD 5, SSD sampler 5. Okay, right. So now the MIDI is going to be sent to SSD 5. Okay, so let's load up a couple of samples. Right. So for the kick, right, one of my favorites, right, would be under the deluxe sample pack. This would be the kick pearls. Here we go. Right. Let's pull it in here. Let's load it up. And in the meantime, while we're at it, might as well just load up a snare first, okay? So let's take, for example, snare Ludwig Black Beauty. Okay, let's just pull this in. Let's load it into the snare. Okay, here we go. So let's listen to how it sounds. This would be the kick drum sample. All right, okay, all right, let's delete this one, okay, because this is kind of going to the next bar already. So this is what you get, okay. So as you can see, it responds dynamically, okay. Now, with MIDI triggers, okay, sometimes it is never a 100% thing, okay. So sometimes, right, depending on how I tweak it, as you can see here, there are some a little bit of false trigger keys. So you have to go in sometimes and to double check and see. All right. But Steven Slate trigger and Steven Slate drums in combination with SSD5, right, has been my favorite. Okay. It's really, really awesome. The tracking and the triggering is extremely tight, right? I get very, very little phase issues, okay? So minor things like this, okay? All these false triggers and ghost triggers is something that you may have to go in and deal with manually. Okay, let me do this. Let's clean this up. So one more here. Is any more? Just one more over here. Okay, there we go. Right. So let's play again this 8-bar loop. Let's just listen to just the sample, kick drum sample only. Right, as you can hear, right, and also as you can see by the MIDI velocity controller lane over here, right, this is responding and following exactly the dynamics of what's being played by the drummer. Okay, so that's very, very important, because if you kind of set all your if you set all the dynamic values like flat, for instance, if I do this, okay, for instance, if I set everything to a fixed value of, let's say, fixed velocity of, let's say, 100, this is what you're going to get. Now, sometimes this may work depending on the situation, depending on the style of music. Maybe you want something like this, okay? And another situation which I can think of where you maybe want to keep the velocity fixed, you want to keep it fixed, right, is, for instance, if you want to layer underneath. Now, in this case, right, the original drum performance here is really, really good, dynamics wise, the groove, everything is absolutely sounding fantastic already. So what I want to do, right, with the drum samples in this case is just to enhance it, right? So in this case, I would probably, keep a fixed velocity like this, right? Keep it at about 100, okay? And just layer in this kick drum sample underneath the actual original mic'd kick drum sound. Okay, so let's listen to the both of them, and let me sort of play around with the volume. Let me bring down the volume, okay, and the volume is right here. Okay, let me just check it out. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm going to balance the volume of the kick drum sample so that it will be kind of just blending in, okay? Here we go. There we go. Nice, okay? Very, very nice. So this is the kick drum itself, the original kick drum. Okay, and then the kick drum with the sample. All right. So I love to do this, all right, because what it does, it adds that layer, it adds that very, very consistent, very, very dynamic layer, all right? So it's adding to what is already essentially a very, very consistent and a very, very great drum performance, okay? And it just makes it sound even better, okay? So now let's move on very quickly to the snare drum. We do the same thing, okay? Let's repeat the same process. Let's solo the snare drum. Check it out. Okay, let's pull up trigger 2 in this case. Same thing, all right? Let me adjust the volume. Let's bring the detail down. Okay, right. So this drum performance, okay, actually has a lot of ghost notes in it, but it's really, really tricky, right, to sort of nail and to program the ghost notes. So in this case, all right, what we're gonna do, the main thing that I want to do and want to capture anyway, right, will be more of the actual snare hits, okay, on the 2 and the 4. So let's check it out. Okay, now let's see how it sounds with the gate. All right. Again, really, really tight sounding. Okay, but in this case, right, with this snare, right, what it does is that it's gonna be gating out all the ghost notes, and I don't want that. We want to keep and preserve the ghost notes. So let's leave the gate off. So next thing we want to do, okay, let me maybe tweak this a little bit. So the low cut will be about 100 hertz. Let's bring the high cut down to about 10K because we don't want all the top end. Okay, so trigger will kind of focus, right, and listen to this narrower band of frequencies. Okay, so same thing. After we've done that, let's clear the buffer. Okay, make sure, and let's capture the MIDI. Here we go. All right, let's play. One, two, three, four. Yeah, there we have it. Okay, so next thing we do, okay, let's drag this on track and hey presto, there we go. There we got our snare trigger MIDI information. Okay, let's rename this snare sample. Right. Okay. So it's already being signed and assigned to SSD5, which is great, fantastic. Okay. Another thing, I as usual also have the uh, macro to transpose this to the right MIDI notes. Here we go. All right, set notes to fixed pitch D1. Okay, so right. So in general MIDI, okay, C1 is for the kick. All right, on the piano, the C1 note is a kick. D1 is for the snare. So let's take a look at how it sounds. All right, cool. Right. So this is the sample as we loaded earlier. Right. This was the Ludwig Black Beauty drum. Okay, now with this, I am probably going to let's play around, experiment with it. Right, I'm going to set this one all the way up to 125. So let's bring everything up. Okay, let's listen to it and see. Okay, very cool, right? So except for the very, very last snare hit, right, which is, there is a little bit of a dynamic here. Let's take a look. Okay. Right, so the second snare hit over here would be just slightly softer. Okay, great. Okay, so same thing. Let's take a listen now, right, with everything together. Right, okay. Without the samples. This is how it sounds without the sample. This is with the samples. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Okay, great. Sounding awesome. Okay, really, really loving it. So there you go. Let's take a listen to the entire drum kit, right, with the samples. Right, this is without. This is with. Okay, right. Obviously, right, we could spend a lot of time kind of tweaking around and selecting, different drum samples. We can always kind of alter the sound of the kick drum and the snare drum after the fact, after it's been recorded. Maybe we want to, maybe in a certain song, you want to be a little bit creative. You want to layer it with an 808. You want to layer it with a clap. You want to layer it with, some other kind of percussive sound, you could also do that as well. Okay, right? Whatever you deem appropriate, right, for the song that you're working on. So let's take a last listen to this entire section again, okay, with all of the instruments, right? So check it out. Here we go. All right. Okay. So, this is just a little short video to sort of show you how I do drum sample replacement. Hopefully, this gives you a little bit more a detailed look at how I do the drum sample replacement. Thank you so much for watching this video. Okay, I hope you found it helpful and informative. If you enjoyed it, please do leave a like, okay? Do share this around with your friends. And if you haven't done so, head on down and click on the subscribe button, all right? Do subscribe to the Stu 2105, the Direct Access Mix Stream channel, right? It would really, really be awesome if you do so, okay? Till next time, all right? Happy sample replacing, all right? Take care, and I'll see you again in the next video.